I did promise a rather obscure addition to my standalone local co-op reviews, and it is of course We Are the Dwarves from the Kyiv-based Whale Rock Games. My name is Coop. This game was released in 2016 and it does feature 3-player local co-op, but it is not your normal symmetric ARPG. We are looking at the single player mode here. It does come with the twin stick setup, but you actually have a time stop button on the trigger. It has a very tactical element, and you're a lumbering sort of sci-fi dwarf. One of the builds has got an actual gun. This isn't too sword and sorcery, which is quite welcome. We are also looking at a locked character loadout, but there's a brawler, there's a guy with range, and there's also a sort of semi-assassin dude. But considering the fastest moving speed is around 6 miles an hour, that one's a bit of a tough sell. But it's cool to see the differences in hotkeys and actions available to you. I was doing some research and looking at some articles about this game, and one journalist described this as XCOM meets Dark Souls. A horrendously bad take on what we're actually looking at here. XCOM is turn-based, if you don't know, and not local co-op, and a million miles from an action RPG brackets real time. But this individual did hit on something with the Dark Souls reference. It's ridiculously unforgiving and difficult. There's also absolutely zero music. That might be a problem on my end. But death is treated extremely casually. It happens a lot. There's no dodge and roll and avoid. You can't lumber out the way of a lot of the projectiles coming towards you. And also its lock-on mechanic isn't exactly layman, but things just start falling into place. It's quite atmospheric. I don't mind these graphics. Part of me was thinking this is a local co-op symmetric Deep Rock Galactic. Again, that one is a bit of a tough sell. Another reason I'm putting you through this review is that I found it on GOG at 97 pence, which is less than the British pound. That site also gave me Mad Max on PC for less than £2, so I would recommend keeping one eye on that front page. So what's the deal with the heal? There is no replenishable health over time. You've got to make your way over to larger crystal balls, which is quite forgiving with. And there is also some integral differences other than not being able to pause the game in local co-op, but with the powers themselves. That single player campaign very much emphasizes the differences in the dwarfs, having you control just one of them at a time and allocate an NPC. But you don't start with all 4 sets of hotkeys at the bottom there. It is a bit of a baptism of fire with the local co-op because you're straight in, you've got to learn what all of these new moves do, and the cooldown time on them has got to be the longest of any action RPG I've ever played in my life. So this isn't a high-speed cut and thrust like its Diablo counterparts. You'll see that there's a trace where your weapon's going to be firing. You have to double tap everything because you will have a range marker or a sort of radius cone on where you're going to deal that damage, what direction you're going to be firing in. And that's where the focus system can knock you back a bit, because you might not realize that the move you're going to employ is actually focused on an enemy behind you. So it does take some getting used to, and the combo that we sort of fell in with was 1 range and 1 brawler, because I could go up and actually occupy the enemy, and then we had Lewis sort of picking them off from the back, and of course the shotgun has a huge knockback on the enemies, and I have a shout which can push stuff off the edge, and that's what you're really aiming for. You're trying to use the bushes to creep up on the groups and then get a big move in to knock them off the edge, thus thinning things out a bit. After some of the larger dungeon sections, it shows you a strange map that you don't have anything to do with, but you do have the option to switch out your load on the dwarfs themselves. So you can mix things up if you know there's a difficult level coming up, or if you want to change the combination with the 2 of you or 3 of you, you are given that option then, which is pretty cool. You aren't committed for your entire playthrough. The enemies themselves are a little bit drab. I don't mind the humanoid, strange, like dark elf look, but there is some proper Xeno bug busting coming up, complete with eggs, and you kind of get swamped. There's also swamps that will stop you using any of your moves and move even slower than the actual in-game speed. So those hazards are ones to look out for. The animations, particularly on the brawler, are uncancelable. So once you commit with swinging that thing around, you've got to watch him hit nothing for a few seconds because you're facing in the wrong direction. But as mentioned before, once things start falling into place and you know how to utilize your character, you kind of start really enjoying yourself. And things are so difficult that you have to communicate. You can't get rushed, and each person can affect the others with the knockback on the shotgun and the explosive grenades. So there's some mild friendly fire involved here. Dare I say it, Helldivers 1 almost. One player can revive the other, and it's not timed, it's a one button process, but the other player comes back with like a millimeter of health and you're in that whole I'm dead again situation where someone is blatantly having to look after the other one because there's not that little bit of health around the corner. You've got to get to these damn great crystals, and I didn't look into the save restart point too much. It never put us really far back to the start of the levels, so there's certainly not a Dark Souls reference in that direction. Also, not enough sort of bosses, mid-tier bosses. You sort of come across camps and you peel away, you might be rescuing someone, or there might be a medium-sized individual embedded in the center. There may be bigger ones coming up, but mixing the bugs in, and this is relatively early game, is pretty cool. They have egg sacs that you need to rupture to save yourself a massive headache, and of course you got to avoid those swamps because you won't be able to fire back, and again that is inevitable death. Another title this started to remind me of mildly in places, and it's not XCOM. It was Inquisitor Martyr. You might remember that 40k Diablo-esque game. It was strong on the single player front. It offered local co-op, but it was a cheeky tack on. It was a locked character. You didn't get to choose too many loadouts, and it was quite difficult because only one person had control of the camera. The whole thing felt a little bit higgledy-piggledy. With We Are the Dwarves, the camera is firmly locked in the position you see here, and they didn't take into account some of the furniture on the map clean getting in the way of your eye line on the character. They haven't added that sort of traced outline that modern games would if you were obscured by something in map. But it's 2016, it's totally forgivable, and you don't normally lose where you're standing that much. It does highlight the enemies behind all of that though, I've just noticed. How did this game review? Is it revered as a local co-op classic? Not exactly. But unlike Inquisitor Martyr, it does feel like they had it in mind from the ground up. It doesn't feel like a mode that is shoved in. I made a list of local co-op ARPGs that aren't Diablo 4. I will link it in the description. I hadn't discovered this game at the time of making the list, and it may well have made it on there. It is also available on the PlayStation 4 full local co-op, and I would be interested to see what it's actually sitting at on the store. Let's look now, Coop. I bet it's not 97 pence. £7.99, which is £8. I suppose that's not that bad. And also notice there's that 3-player local symbol down there. Sometimes they just pull the 3-player on a console version, and vice versa for PC, so it's good that that's confirmed. Despite it not having any music whatsoever, and listening to the gameplay with a set of headphones on, in hindsight, it's actually got some really great sound design and echoes. The explosions are cool, everything sounds like quite meaty. The production in this game is not terrible, and it probably retailed at near on AA cost, I imagine, on launch in 2016. I think you should only go to it if you're a huge fan of the genre and you want some more local co-op action in that direction. And of course, it's not extortionate and it is available on PC and console. It is no Children of Mortar. I've dealt with that one already, and also that game does not look like it's going to get sequeled, which has kind of broken my heart a bit. I am due to put my top local co-op games of 2025 together. The 2024 list, which I'll annotate and link, didn't perform that great, so fingers crossed on 2025. This game review will go in the standalone homepage playlist with loads of others that I've got to recently, including Tony Hawk's and The Savage Planet, which is amazing. My name was, of course, Couch Coop, and I look forward to seeing you down there.